On a cold evening in late February 2023, emergency dispatchers in Nashville, Tennessee, received a frantic 911 call just after 9:30 p.m. On the other end of the line was 26-year-old former college football player Blaze Taylor. His voice carried urgency as he explained that his girlfriend, 24-year-old Jade Benning, had suddenly become seriously ill. Jade was nearly 6 months pregnant, and according to the information provided to first responders, she appeared to be suffering from what was believed to be a severe allergic reaction. Paramedics rushed to the home, treating the situation as a medical emergency before transporting her to the hospital. But as doctors examined Jade, something didn't fit the explanation. Her condition did not resemble a typical allergic reaction. Medical staff began asking difficult questions as they searched for the real cause of her sudden collapse. What investigators would later uncover transformed what first appeared to be a tragic medical emergency into a criminal investigation that would capture national attention. Jade Benning had built a life filled with ambition and hope. Born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas, she had always dreamed of pursuing a career in the culinary arts. Friends and family described her as hardworking, compassionate, and determined to succeed. She attended community college to study culinary arts, dedicating herself to mastering the skills needed to become a professional chef. After graduating in 2020, Jade moved to Nashville, Tennessee, where she accepted a position at Ernest Bar and Hideaway. Her passion for cooking didn't end when her shifts were over. Motivated to create something of her own, she also launched a catering business called JTB Eatery, hoping to one day build a successful culinary brand. Despite her demanding schedule, Jade made time for the people who mattered most. She remained especially close to her mother, Bridget, speaking with her regularly. She also shared an unbreakable friendship with Najaya Jackson, someone she had known since childhood. Their friendship had survived years of life's changes, and they celebrated each other's milestones together. Then, in November 2022, Jade received life-changing news. After taking a home pregnancy test, she discovered she was expecting a baby. Excited and overwhelmed, she immediately shared the news with those closest to her. Najaya helped her search for a doctor's appointment to confirm the pregnancy. And although they couldn't find a same-day visit, they secured an appointment for the following day. For Jade, the pregnancy represented a new chapter. She continued planning for the future while balancing work, preparing for motherhood, and pursuing her dream of growing her catering business. No one close to her could have imagined how quickly everything would change. Months later, the emergency call brought doctors, investigators, and eventually detectives together in a case that raised disturbing questions. According to investigators, evidence would eventually suggest that Jade's collapse was not the result of natural causes or an unexpected allergic reaction. One detail would become especially significant. Before losing consciousness, Jade reportedly managed to contact a trusted friend. Investigators later examined this communication as they pieced together the final hours of her life. As detectives continued gathering medical evidence, interviewing witnesses, and reviewing the timeline, the case increasingly pointed toward foul play rather than a medical emergency. The investigation would eventually focus on the people closest to Jade, leading authorities to examine whether someone she trusted had betrayed that trust in the most devastating way possible. The death of Jade Benning shocked her family, friends, and the Nashville community. She was remembered not only as a talented young chef with entrepreneurial dreams, but also as an expectant mother whose future was filled with promise. The investigation into her death serves as a reminder that appearances can sometimes hide a far more disturbing reality. What initially seemed like a sudden medical crisis would ultimately become one of the most heartbreaking criminal cases to emerge from Nashville in 2023. As legal proceedings continue, the case remains a powerful example of why investigators carefully examine every detail before drawing conclusions. For Jade's loved ones, however, no verdict can replace the daughter, friend, and mother-to-be they lost. As Jade's pregnancy progressed, the excitement among her family and closest friends only grew stronger. After her doctor's appointment confirmed she was expecting a baby, she eagerly shared the wonderful news with the people she loved most. Her mother immediately began preparing for the arrival of her first grandchild, shopping for baby clothes and other essentials. Jade's lifelong best friend also stepped in to help organize celebrations and support her throughout the pregnancy. It was a joyful season filled with hope, plans, and anticipation. Jade had recently moved into a larger apartment in Nashville, believing it would be the perfect place to welcome her daughter. She often sent ultrasound pictures to her family, proudly showing how much the baby was growing. She had already chosen a name, Ivy. Friends said she couldn't wait to become a mother and often talked about the future she hoped to build for her little girl. Everything appeared to be falling into place. Then, on the evening of February 25th, 2023, that future was suddenly thrown into chaos. Just after 9:30 p.m., emergency dispatchers received a desperate 911 call from Jade's apartment. The caller was her boyfriend, Blaze Taylor, who reported that Jade had become seriously ill. During the call, he suggested she might be suffering from a severe allergic reaction, although he admitted he wasn't certain what was happening. As dispatchers asked questions, Blaze described Jade becoming increasingly unresponsive. He stated she had been awake only moments earlier, but was no longer answering him. Emergency operators instructed him on what to do, while paramedics rushed to the apartment. When first responders arrived, they discovered Jade unconscious in the bedroom. She was in critical condition and no longer had a detectable pulse. Medical personnel immediately began life-saving efforts before transporting her to Vanderbilt University Medical Center. At the hospital, doctors quickly realized something was unusual. The symptoms Jade displayed did not match those of a typical allergic reaction. Medical staff found no signs commonly associated with severe allergies, prompting physicians to consider other possible causes. Toxicology testing became an important part of the investigation as doctors searched for answers. As investigators interviewed Blaze Taylor, he explained that the couple had spent the evening together before Jade suddenly complained that she didn't feel well. According to his account, he panicked when her condition rapidly worsened and contacted family members before calling 911. Detectives carefully documented every detail of his statement, comparing it with the emergency call, medical findings, and physical evidence collected from the apartment. Attention soon turned to Blaze himself. Well known in the football world, Blaze Taylor had built an impressive resume. The son of longtime football coach Trooper Taylor, he excelled both academically and athletically during his years at Arkansas State University. Coaches described him as disciplined, intelligent, and a natural leader. After college, he pursued a professional career in football operations, eventually working as a scout for the Tennessee Titans. His achievements and public image stood in sharp contrast to the growing criminal investigation. As detectives continued reviewing evidence, they began reconstructing the final hours before Jade's collapse. Phone records, witness interviews, forensic testing, and medical reports all became crucial pieces of a puzzle that investigators believed would reveal exactly what happened inside the apartment that night. For Jade's family, however, the investigation could never erase their loss. They remembered her as a talented young chef, a devoted daughter, a loyal friend, and an excited mother-to-be whose dreams were cut tragically short. What began as a reported medical emergency would ultimately evolve into one of Nashville's most closely watched criminal cases, raising difficult questions about trust, deception, and the devastating consequences of betrayal. As authorities continued building their case, they remained focused on uncovering the truth behind Jade Benning's final hours and seeking justice for both her and the unborn daughter she had already named Ivy. Although Blaze Taylor had built a reputation as an accomplished athlete and football professional, investigators would soon begin examining whether the image he presented publicly matched what had happened behind closed doors. Friends described him as intelligent, ambitious, and successful. His career in football had taken him across the country, and just days before the incident, he had returned to Nashville after traveling for work. Nothing about his public life suggested that he would soon become the focus of a major criminal investigation. On the evening Jade collapsed, everything had seemed normal at first. Earlier that night, Jade welcomed close friends to her apartment. They stopped by briefly to pick up food she had prepared, including her well-known homemade chicken Alfredo. According to those friends, Jade appeared cheerful, healthy, and excited about the future. There were no obvious signs that anything was wrong. But within a short period after they left, the situation changed dramatically. One of Jade's closest friends later told investigators that she received a phone call from Jade shortly before the emergency call was placed. Instead of carrying on a normal conversation, Jade reportedly kept the line open while events unfolded inside the apartment. According to court documents, the friend later reported hearing Jade express fear and accuse her boyfriend of putting something into her drink. She allegedly said she felt strange and that she was frightened. The call eventually ended without any clear explanation. Alarmed by what she had heard, the friend immediately headed back toward Jade's apartment. By the time she arrived, emergency responders were already there, and Jade was being taken to the hospital in an ambulance. As doctors fought to save Jade and her unborn daughter, investigators began interviewing everyone who had been with her that evening. Detectives carefully compared witness statements, phone records, and medical findings in an effort to establish a complete timeline of the night's events. Meanwhile, Jade's family received devastating news and immediately traveled from Arkansas to Nashville. The long drive was filled with uncertainty, as they hoped doctors would be able to save both Jade and her baby. When they reached the hospital, they were met with an unimaginable reality. Jade was critically ill and being kept alive with advanced medical support while physicians searched for answers. Outside the hospital, investigators continued gathering evidence. Every conversation, every phone call, and every detail from that evening became part of a growing investigation. What initially appeared to be a sudden medical emergency was increasingly being viewed through a very different lens. Detectives were no longer asking only what had happened. They were asking whether someone had intentionally caused it. As the investigation progressed, forensic evidence, witness testimony, and laboratory results would become central to determining exactly what happened during Jade Benning's final hours. Those findings would eventually lead authorities to pursue one of the most closely watched criminal cases in Nashville, as prosecutors worked to establish whether the tragedy had been the result of deliberate actions rather than a natural medical event. For Jade's loved ones, however, the legal process could never undo the loss they suffered. They remembered her not for the headlines surrounding the case, but for her kindness, her passion for cooking, and the excitement she felt about becoming the mother of a little girl she had already named Ivy. As investigators continued examining the apartment, they carefully documented the scene in search of anything that might explain Jade's sudden collapse. The apartment itself appeared surprisingly orderly. Cooking utensils had been put away, leftover food remained in the kitchen, and there were few obvious signs of a struggle. At first glance, nothing immediately suggested that a violent crime had occurred. However, several details attracted attention. One was the position of a home security camera. According to people familiar with the apartment, the camera was not where it was normally kept. Its placement raised questions about whether it had been intentionally moved before or during the events of that evening. Investigators also examined stains on the bedding where Jade had been found. As with any suspicious death investigation, forensic specialists documented and tested physical evidence to determine whether it could provide clues about what had happened. Attention soon turned to drinks and food that had been in the apartment that night. Detectives collected items they believed might have evidentiary value and sent them for laboratory testing as they worked to determine whether anything Jade consumed could explain her medical emergency. Despite the efforts of emergency responders and hospital staff, Jade's condition never improved. Doctors ultimately informed her family that the damage caused by the lack of oxygen to her brain was irreversible. Days later, another heartbreaking loss followed. Her unborn daughter, whom Jade had already planned to name Ivy, did not survive. On March 6, 2023, Jade's 25th birthday, her family made the painful decision to remove her from life support. The medical examiner later determined that Jade died from cocaine toxicity. However, determining the exact manner of death proved far more complicated. Medical findings alone could not establish how the drug entered her body or whether another person had been responsible. That uncertainty shifted the focus of the investigation toward Jade's relationships and the events leading up to her death. Detectives learned that Jade and Blaze Taylor had met through a dating app in 2022. After reconnecting later that year, they began seeing each other more regularly. Not long afterward, Jade discovered she was pregnant. According to court records, the pregnancy became a significant point of disagreement. Prosecutors alleged that Jade wanted to continue the pregnancy and prepare for motherhood, while Blaze Taylor did not want to become a parent. Investigators examined messages, phone records, and witness statements to better understand the nature of their relationship and whether those disagreements played any role in the case. As detectives continued gathering evidence, they worked to build a detailed timeline of the weeks and hours before Jade's death. Every text message, phone call, interview, and forensic result became another piece of the puzzle in an investigation that would eventually lead to criminal charges. The case remains one of the most closely followed criminal investigations involving the death of an expectant mother, with legal proceedings continuing through the courts. Because those proceedings are ongoing, allegations made by prosecutors have not yet been proven in court, and the defendant is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. According to investigators, Jade made her intentions clear after learning she was pregnant. She told Blaze that she respected his decision if he chose not to be involved, but she also made it clear that she intended to continue the pregnancy. In messages later referenced in court documents, she expressed that she would love and raise her child regardless of whether the father chose to participate. Although communication between them stopped for a period, the silence did not last. Around the beginning of 2023, Blaze contacted Jade again. Friends later told investigators that Jade viewed his renewed interest with cautious optimism. She believed they might be able to rebuild a friendship and perhaps create a healthier relationship before their daughter was born. Even so, the future remained uncertain. According to prosecutors, questions surrounding the pregnancy had not completely disappeared. The couple reportedly discussed confirming paternity after the baby was born, and Jade largely kept news of the pregnancy within her close circle of family and trusted friends rather than sharing it publicly. Despite the uncertainty, Jade continued preparing for motherhood. On the evening of February 25th, 2023, she planned what appeared to be a relaxed date night at her apartment. The evening included a homemade meal, freshly baked cookies, painting supplies, and blank canvases. Investigators later determined that the paintings were intended for the nursery she was preparing for her unborn daughter, Ivy. Throughout the evening, Jade took photographs documenting the occasion. The pictures showed dinner, artwork in progress, and moments the couple appeared to share together. Friends who later saw the images described them as ordinary snapshots of two people spending time together. Nothing in those photographs hinted at the tragedy that investigators say would unfold only minutes later. According to the timeline presented by prosecutors, Jade's final photographs were taken shortly before she contacted one of her closest friends. That phone call would later become one of the most significant pieces of evidence examined during the investigation. Medical experts later estimated that the substance responsible for Jade's fatal poisoning had likely been consumed shortly before she became critically ill. Investigators compared that medical timeline with photographs, phone records, witness statements, and digital evidence in an effort to reconstruct the final minutes before the emergency call. Those seemingly ordinary moments, sharing a meal, painting pictures for a baby's nursery, smiling for photographs, would later be scrutinized in extraordinary detail. The investigation into Jade's death raised serious questions about how crucial evidence was handled in the hours after she was rushed to the hospital. Investigators returned to her apartment on February 26th to conduct a detailed search. But by then, the crime scene had already been compromised. Although officers had performed an initial sweep the previous night, the apartment was not properly secured afterward. As a result, several people who were close to Jade entered the residence, moved belongings, and removed items before detectives could document the scene. During the search, investigators collected fruit juice, lemonade, drinking glasses, dinner containers, and other kitchen items for forensic testing. Surprisingly, none of these items tested positive for cocaine. No cocaine was found anywhere inside the apartment, and there was no trace of the drug in the two pink-colored drinks or the glasses that remained at the scene. Medical evidence, however, confirmed that Jade had ingested cocaine orally. This created a major contradiction. Investigators believed the most likely explanation was that the glass containing the drug, or other critical evidence, had been removed or thoroughly cleaned before police completed their investigation. Because the scene had not been secured immediately, proving exactly what happened became much more difficult. Another setback involved Jade's Blink security camera. Although the device was installed inside the apartment, it was not subscribed to the recording service and functioned only as a live feed. Even if it had been recording, investigators noted that its position near the bedroom window meant it would not have captured the kitchen or the bed, where important events were believed to have taken place. The apartment complex also had surveillance cameras that may have shown people entering or leaving the building that night. Investigators hoped the footage might reveal whether anyone disposed of evidence before emergency responders arrived. Unfortunately, the footage was requested too late. By the time detectives attempted to obtain it, the recordings had already been automatically deleted. One piece of physical evidence did test positive for cocaine: the comforter stained with Jade's vomit. While this confirmed that cocaine was present after she became ill, it did not identify who had supplied the drug or how it had entered her system. Prosecutors still lacked direct physical evidence connecting the cocaine to Blaze Taylor. Despite these challenges, investigators continued working the case for months. They interviewed witnesses, reviewed evidence, and reconstructed the timeline leading up to Jade's death. More than a year later, prosecutors concluded they had gathered enough evidence to seek criminal charges. In March 2024, a Tennessee grand jury indicted Blaze Taylor on a charge of murder. He was later arrested by U.S. Marshals in Utah, where he had been working as a football coach. According to authorities, he had recently accepted a coaching position at Texas A&M before his arrest. After being taken into custody, he was informed that he was wanted in Tennessee on a homicide warrant. Blaze Taylor pleaded not guilty, and his trial began in June 2026. Since there was little physical evidence directly linking him to the cocaine, prosecutors relied heavily on witness testimony, circumstantial evidence, and Jade's final statements during a phone call with a friend. According to the prosecution, Jade suddenly became confused and physically weak shortly after consuming a drink. During the call, she reportedly questioned Blaze directly, saying she could not feel her legs, could not walk properly, and believed her drink had tasted unusual. She repeatedly asked, "What did you put in my drink?" Those statements became one of the central pieces of evidence presented in court. Prosecutors argued that Blaze wanted to prevent the pregnancy from becoming public. They claimed he wanted to keep the pregnancy a secret. But with Jade entering her third trimester and planning baby showers in both Little Rock and Nashville, they argued that secrecy was becoming impossible. Her birthday was only days away, and prosecutors contended that by early March, news of the pregnancy would likely have become widely known. The defense denied the allegations, maintaining Blaze Taylor's innocence and challenging the prosecution's interpretation of the evidence. As the trial proceeded, the jury was tasked with deciding whether the combination of forensic findings, witness testimony, Jade's reported final words, and the surrounding circumstances proved the prosecution's case beyond a reasonable doubt. The case remains one of the most closely watched true crime stories because it highlights how delays in securing a crime scene, missing surveillance footage, and the loss of potential evidence can significantly complicate a homicide investigation. It also underscores the importance of forensic science, witness testimony, and careful investigative work when direct physical evidence is limited. Instead of celebrating the upcoming arrival of her baby, Jade Benning tragically lost her life that day. During the trial, Blaze Taylor's defense aggressively challenged nearly every aspect of the prosecution's case. They argued that investigators failed to properly preserve the crime scene, allowing potential evidence to be moved or removed before it was documented. The defense also pointed to the medical examiner's findings, emphasizing that the manner of Jade's death was officially classified as undetermined, not homicide, even as the case went before a jury. A key part of the defense's argument was that Jade voluntarily consumed cocaine. They maintained that Blaze Taylor did not use drugs and did not even drink alcohol. The defense also presented evidence and testimony regarding Jade's past substance use, claiming she had previously used marijuana, Adderall, THC vape cartridges, psychedelic mushrooms, and alcohol. Their position was that there was no proof Blaze secretly placed cocaine in her drink. The prosecution strongly rejected that version of events. Instead, they relied on Jade's final words, witness testimony, medical evidence, and the timeline of events, arguing that she had repeatedly questioned what had been put into her drink as she rapidly became ill. One of the most emotional moments of the trial came when Jade's best friend, Najia Jackson, took the stand. Fighting back tears, she described Jade as more than just a best friend. She was like a sister. She remembered Jade as kind, warm, and full of life. According to her testimony, Jade never judged people based on their background, race, gender, or financial status. She had a rare ability to make anyone feel welcome and could become friends with almost anyone she met. As the trial continued, the jury faced the difficult task of weighing conflicting testimony, disputed evidence, and heartbreaking final moments to determine what truly happened to Jade Benning. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy real-life true crime stories that explore the facts behind some of the world's most shocking cases, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support helps the channel grow and allows us to continue bringing you carefully researched true crime stories. I'll see you in the next video.